We're always told to just say no politely, right? But what happens when that doesn't work? When the other person just won't listen? Well, today we are diving into a really powerful framework for exactly those moments, for when being polite just isn't cutting it anymore. Let's get right into it.
I mean, come on, we've all been there. You say no as clearly and as kindly as you possibly can. You explain your reasons, you do everything you're supposed to do, and they just keep pushing. It's so frustrating, right? And it can even make you start to second guess yourself, to feel like maybe you're the one doing something wrong. But here's the big question. What if the problem isn't your communication at all? What if it's just their refusal to listen? So let's start by digging into why our usual strategies can sometimes just completely fall flat. This is where that gap between what we expect to happen and what actually happens gets, well, painfully obvious. Yeah, this really just captures that total disconnect, doesn't it? On one hand, you're expecting them to be reasonable, to listen, maybe even negotiate. But the reality? They just keep pushing. You think your polite no is going to be respected, but it's like you're talking to a brick wall. And here's the real kicker. They often take your politeness, your attempt to be decent and explain yourself, and they see it as a weakness. It's like an open invitation for them to push you even harder. Ah, so frustrating. Okay, so this brings us to a really, really crucial realization. Because when politeness fails, the problem actually shifts. It's no longer about your communication skills. It's about something way more fundamental. And here's the key idea. The moment someone proves they are not going to be reasonable, trying to find a better way to say no is a complete waste of your energy. Seriously, at that point, your words, they kind of don't matter anymore. It's like you're trying to play chess with someone who's just knocking all the pieces off the board. This really gets to the heart of it all. See, our natural instinct is to try harder, right? To explain it one more time, to come up with a more rational argument, maybe even be a little more considerate in our tone. But when you're dealing with someone who's just not playing by the rules, none of that works. What you actually need is a stable, unmoving stance. It stops being about what you say, and it becomes all about where you stand. Okay, so the big question is, how do you know when it's time to make that shift? Well, this is where a really simple but incredibly powerful distinction comes in. It's all about understanding which mode you're operating in. You literally have to stop and ask yourself, am I in negotiation mode with someone who's reasonable? Or am I in boundary mode, defending myself against someone who isn't? Figuring out which situation you're in, that is the single most important step. It changes everything about what you do next. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. On the one side, you've got negotiation mode. That's the green light. The other person is listening. They're open to discussion. That's where all your politeness and refusal skills actually work. But then you've got boundary mode. That's the red light. You've already said no, but they're still pushing. Your position is being ignored. And in this mode, gentleness isn't seen as kindness. It's seen as a retreat. It's a signal to them to push hard. All right, so let's say you've figured it out. You're in boundary mode. Now what? What do you actually do? Well, you need a different kind of tool. Something simple, something direct, and something that leaves absolutely no room for them to misunderstand. Okay, first things first, you have got to avoid the trap of over-explaining. And man, we've all been there, right? You're thinking, okay, if I just explain it one more time, maybe with a bit more logic, then they'll get it. But here's the hard truth we have to face. For a person who's being unreasonable, the very act of you still explaining is a signal. It tells them the boundary's still up for grabs, that it's still negotiable. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. For unreasonable people, the act of explaining is in itself a concession. Every extra word you use to justify your no actually makes it weaker. You're basically saying, yeah, this is still up for debate. But in boundary mode, the debate is over. So this is the point where you have to strip away all the polite packaging. You don't need to soften it. You don't need to wrap it in a nice bow. You need one thing, absolute, undeniable clarity. And that comes from just one powerful sentence. And here it is. The phrase you need is simply, I cannot accept this. That's it. It's not an opening for a debate. It's not an invocation for them to argue with you. It is a simple, direct, and incredibly powerful statement of your absolute limit. And from that point on, your job becomes incredibly simple. Just 2 steps. 1, state the unacceptable. I cannot accept this. And 2, stop talking. Seriously, just stop. That silence that follows, that's not awkwardness. That's your boundary solidifying. Don't you dare rush to fill it. And let's be crystal clear about what this is and what it isn't. This statement is not about arguing over who's right or wrong. It is not your job to soothe their emotions or manage their reaction, and you are not responsible for how they feel about it. It is simply a declaration of your limit. Full stop. So let's take a step back and reframe what this action is really all about. This is not about you becoming aggressive or suddenly being a difficult person. This is about you becoming clear. It's about becoming grounded in your own boundary. See, it's not about losing your temper. It is about understanding what mode you're in. It's not about becoming aggressive. It is about realizing some people don't need to be persuaded. They just need to see your absolute limit. You are not being difficult. You are being clear. So I want you to think about this. The next time you find yourself stuck in that horrible loop, explaining and justifying over and over again and just feeling completely unheard, I want you to just pause and ask yourself this one simple question. Am I trying to negotiate when I should be defending a boundary? Is it time to switch modes?
Because that's really the ultimate takeaway here, isn't it? Sometimes a no isn't just a word that you need to say more eloquently. It's a position that you need to hold firmly. It's not just spoken, it has to be demonstrated. Because it's only when you finally stand your ground that the world, and that person, is forced to recognize where your boundary truly lies.